Well, welcome to Shanghai. As you can see, as we look out the window, it's not a blue sky day here in Shanghai. Not the worst day either in terms of air pollution. And I'm here with two people who can help talk about China's energy and environmental challenges. Immediately to my right is Professor Mike McElroy, who's the Gilbert Butler Professor of Environmental Studies at Harvard. He's the founding director of the University Center for the Study of the Environment, and he is also the founding director of the Harvard China Project on the Environment at the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And Chris Nielsen, who's the executive director of the China Project, who has published widely on Chinese environmental issues, most recently in a book called Clearer Skies Over China. Can't quite see it today, Chris. We look out onto the newest part of Shanghai here, Pudong, the Oriental Pearl to our background, and one of the great cultural icons of contemporary China, the Apple Store. But that's not why we're here. Harvard has been active in the study of the environment in China, not just the last 2, 3, or 4 years, but at least 15 years. So welcome, Mike. Welcome, Chris, to China X. Mike, if you could start off about how did you begin this project?
I think when Neil Rudenstine became president of Harvard, you and I remember that at that time there was essentially no interaction in different schools at Harvard. Neil Rudenstine had the idea that it was really important to try to bring the university together, and he thought that a theme such as the environment might be a way in which people from the business school, medical school, public health, arts and sciences, and so on could talk to each other. And so he asked me to chair a committee to examine this possibility. So along the way, we started thinking about how do you really get people at Harvard who are all very busy to talk to each other in a serious way. So you have to find some interest that will engage them and where they're going to learn from each other. So recognizing the incredible strength that Harvard has traditionally in Chinese scholarship, it seemed to me a good idea to actually pick China as a theme to work with. So why China other than these considerations? Well, the second thing was that it was already clear 15 years ago that the future of the global environment was going to depend in a significant measure on what happened in China. So that was basically the theme that we started to look at.
Mm-hmm. And did you have from the beginning Chinese collaborators to work with?
The idea from the beginning was that it was not going to work if it was simply Harvard telling China what to do. So it had to be China scholars and US scholars working together to try to develop a common view. And so as we started to think about this in the beginning, we were very fortunate to get very strong support from Sung Jen, who was at that time a very senior figure in the Chinese government, state consular, who came to Harvard, who gave a public talk. Talking to him about what we wanted to do, I said, look, it would be really nice if we could actually bring Harvard scholarship together to learn more about that. And his comment to me, which I will never forget, was he said, China needs to learn more about China, and you guys can help us do that. Building on that, we've had strong collaborations with Beida, with Tsinghua, with other universities, with people in the Academy of Sciences, people in the Academy of Social Sciences, and essentially across the government. So it's been a very exciting experience.
The goal of interdisciplinary collaboration, Mike just alluded to the establishment of the Center for Environment and the China Project under that. It has an interdisciplinary mission, and so through this program, these issues that we're talking about are inherently extremely interdisciplinary. It's been personally gratifying, but also certainly relevant to the topic that we're working on, to be establishing ties to people across different universities, different departments, across disciplines.
What's special about the challenges that we face here in China?
When you talk about China, you have to begin with scale. I mean, China is gigantic. It's a gigantic population. It's a gigantic economy, and it is growing so fast. And the energy demands to feed that economic growth are, so huge that you're really facing a massive challenge in terms of finding ways to reconcile economic development with environmental protection. And so it is, it sort of dwarfs the challenges in other countries. And as Mike also alluded to, the global implications of that are tremendous. We should not fail to recognize that the U.S. responsibilities on these global issues are also enormous, and we have had a huge global impact ourselves in our own country. But actually thinking about the global problems in the context of, how the U.S. and China engage on it is actually fundamental to responding to the global problems. And when we say global problems, we're mainly talking about climate change.
The significant point is that this is a time that's completely unprecedented, in human history. You can go back and think of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution involved a relatively small number of people, and it was relatively localized in terms of its impact. And if you think of the world post World War II world, again, rapid development, but still dwarfed by what's been happening since 1979 in China. So we now have a situation where we have 1.3 billion people, an economy that's been growing at close to double-digit levels for 30 years, an economy that is now consuming more coal than any country in the world, whose demand for oil is succeeded only by the United States and will soon exceed the United States, which produces more carbon dioxide that changes the climate than any other country in the world, more sulfur dioxide, and on and on and on, produces more iron ore, produces more steel. So how do you deal with that particular issue is a very serious problem. And so I think that the climate change issue, which is now global, what happens in China and what happens in the US is key to the future of the world, in my opinion. What we're trying to do at Harvard and in China, I think, is to engage young people in thinking about these issues in a highly interdisciplinary way, because we're not going to solve the problems by any single approach. It's going to be a multitude of approaches if we're going to really deal with these issues. I think the serious problem for China is that the country's energy system is almost completely dependent on coal at the moment. It's 70% of the primary energy is coal. Embedded in that is the air quality problems that go with using coal. But also embedded in that is something that I don't think very many people realize, which is that China doesn't have a lot of coal. If you actually estimate, given Chinese coal reserves, how long can China keep using coal at its current growth rate? The answer is 15, 18 years. So what happens to a country that actually runs out of its primary energy source? Now, it seems to me that the Chinese government is aware of this particular issue and is looking at a variety of ways to try to deal with it. Developing wind power, developing solar, developing nuclear, developing hydro, investing in energy resources in Africa, in the Middle East. I mean, it's essentially a full-bore attempt to really deal with a problem that's going to come crashing down in a very short period of time.